The Warriors Dynasty is over. And yeah, I know this statement was already made before Golden State won the remarkable 2022 championship, shutting up all of their critics, but saying that the Steph-era Warriors will never again be a contender as of today, it isn't a reach. The team from the Bay Area is further and further away from the play-in spots, and Steve Kerr can't seem to find answers for what's happening. A situation that's even more hairy when you consider the payroll and contract situation for their new GM Mike Dunleavy is going through, but with a new person in charge, decisions can be made differently. Are the Warriors capable of getting out of this latest slump before closing a momentous chapter in NBA history, or are they just hopeless? And it's clear if there was a specific moment that changed the dynamic of the franchise, it would have been this one. The tremendous punch that Draymond Green threw at Jordan Poole completely destroyed a locker room that didn't know how to react to such a situation, in the same way that Steve Kerr wasn't able to handle it. An event that took place just months after defeating the Boston Celtics in the 2022 finals. But Poole was never the same, not even to this day as a member of the Wizards. But Draymond's actions didn't stop there. Green's continued to accumulate very questionable behavior in a very short span of time, such as the Sabonis stomp in the playoffs, the brawl with Rudy Gobert earlier this season, or the final straw, this senseless hit on Yusuf Nurkic. Although Kerr continued to support Green in press conferences,
I haven't seen a replay, so
the NBA had no choice but to suspend him indefinitely. A sanction that was eventually lifted after 12 games and caused the Warriors 16 games as a result. Although it's not only because of his absence, but also the fact that Draymond's no longer the player he once was. He's been a below-league average offensive player since the 2018-2019 season, which was the year that KD left the Bay for Brooklyn. And if that wasn't enough, right after his recent re-signing, the forward has an average salary of $25 million per season for the next 4 years, including the player option he'll have at the age of 36. Such an atypical situation and a continuous barrage of criticism that, according to Green himself, caused the player to seriously consider his future, even contemplating retirement. Adam Silver and, of course, Steve Kerr were the most important reasons why Draymond has returned to the courts after his suspension.
It's too much. This is too much. It's all becoming too much for me, and I'm going to retire.
But Green's case is not the only problem Mike Dunleavy has to face. Klay Thompson's in a similar case, albeit without all the controversy. Considered by many as the second best shooter in NBA history, Thompson's going through a slump that could be definitive. This season, Klay shooting 38.6% on three-pointers, which is a worse percentage than any of his seasons prior to his serious injuries. A shooting guard that stood out for his two-way game, being one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. But he's lost his explosiveness, and in part, his confidence. The problem with the second Splash brother is that his contract ends this season, and he could enter free agency to find a better deal. After the precedent of Mike Dunleavy re-signing Draymond during last offseason, it's to be expected that Klay's expectations won't be low. In part because if the GM is offering him a lower contract than the one he offered Dre, he seems to be making his priorities clear. But if one thing's certain, it's that Green's not worth his contract today. And Klay, with the 12th highest salary in the league and earnings of $43.2 million this season, isn't either. A third major problem the Warriors also have to figure out is the Andrew Wiggins situation. After an incredible performance during the 2022 finals, where it was even rumored that the Canadian could be an MVP candidate for the series, it appears that Wiggins is past his prime. Although everything surrounding this issue seems a little strange. During the season after winning the ring, Andrew only played 37 games. But really, the real reason behind his absence is still unknown. There was a lot of speculation on the subject, with many fans arguing genuinely bizarre theories about possible explanations for this drop-off. However, Shams Charania has suggested the real reason behind this absence. What's certain is that Wiggins has not been the same from that moment on. Last season, some fans were already arguing that his form had dropped, but the forward maintained his averages of 17 points and 4 rebounds per game. However, this season, Andrew's averaging less than 12 points per game with an efficiency that's currently the worst of his career. A 49% in true shooting percentage has caused a decrease in his minutes of play. And well, if Wiggins was, like Klay, and expiring, this problem wouldn't be so prominent for the Warriors. However, former GM Bob Myers offered the Canadian a contract extension valued at $100 million for the next 4 seasons. An extension that starts next year, and that in relation to his contribution has turned this good contract into one of the worst in the entire league. The difference between Wiggins' case and the cases of Klay or Draymond is that he's only 28 years old. He's a forward who should be entering the prime of his career, accompanied by athleticism that's always made him stand out among other wings. But just as Steve Kerr was the head coach who allowed Andrew to stand out on such an important stage as the NBA Finals, he's also been the one currently unable to fix the problem with his game. A recurring problem which is becoming more and more prevalent in Golden State is that Kerr is no longer able to get the best out of the players. This narrative is the complete opposite of what existed just a couple of seasons ago when he was able to generate talent out of nothing like with Jordan Poole, or resurrect careers like with Wiggins. Just a few months ago, Kerr was even considered one of the best coaches in the entire NBA, but his performance with Team USA in the last World Cup and his performance with the Dubs this season are changing people's minds. For every coaching success like Jordan Poole or Brandon Pojemski, there's a failure like James Wiseman or Moses Moody. Players who were aiming much higher but failed to develop under Steve Kerr. A reputation of being a great developer of talent that's fading at the same speed as the Warriors' chances of reaching the postseason. To make matters worse, Kerr now has to contend with the uncontent Jonathan Kuminga. The forward who was picked 7th overall in the 2021 draft has been one of the few prospects Golden State has been able to take advantage of. And despite his contribution and stats saying he's a positive impact player on the court, it seems that his role on the team is yet to explode, to the point that the player himself leaked to Shams Charania his dissatisfaction. So as we can see, Kerr doesn't have an easy job. The only glimmer of hope once again lies with Stephen Curry. At 35 years old, the point guard's averaging 27 points per game on 40% from the three-point line. A performance that doesn't seem to drop significantly over time, and is allowing the Warriors to remain within a few games of the play-in rather than a few games of first place in the tankathon. Steph's taking all the heat from the whole situation surrounding the team, and that's really being unfair. Simply put, because he's been the only one to step up to the plate. Stephen Curry's just too good. So good that perhaps his lack of decline is causing a difficult situation in Warrior Land. With one of the NBA legends on the roster, the Warriors are in no man's land, stuck between the need to compete and a complete rebuild. Golden State doesn't have their first-round pick in this draft under their belt either, as it's owned by the Portland Trail Blazers. So no, tanking wouldn't make any sense this season. But really, does Curry deserve this ending to his extraordinary career? Mike Dunleavy has basically two options. He has to make a decision, and if he doesn't make it soon, he'll be left with even less options. The Warriors are a franchise that's invested their future in the present, and it's worked out well for them for a long time. But assets are drying up, and Dunleavy has less and less room to maneuver. The first option is to try to make a last-ditch effort. With the deadline just a few weeks away, and with some of the best players on the market already traded, there are fewer and fewer targets the Warriors could be interested in. The current roster is far from what could be considered a contender today, and the team would need several moves to reach a status that seems more and more distant. That, coupled with the fact that in order to qualify for the playoffs, Golden State would have to have a flawless second half of the season in a manner similar to what the Lakers achieved in 2023. Is this feasible? Probably not. Which brings us to the second option. Dunleavy has a chance, once and for all, to close a historic cycle and try to find the best long-term options. The Warriors are on the brink, and their assets are becoming less and less valuable to other franchises. The departures of Klay, Draymond, and Wiggins would trigger a salary turnover that would make it easier to maneuver over the next few seasons, and would also allow the Warriors to make use of their first-rounders they own. But really, this may also mean the departure of Stephen Curry. The point guard's still too good to be on a team that can't hope to make the playoffs, and his final years of his career deserve to be on par with a player of his legacy. In Mike Dunleavy's hands rests the future of one of the dynasties that not only managed to dominate for a decade, but also managed to change the conception of basketball worldwide. Steve Kerr and Stephen Curry's Warriors were pioneers in the pace and space theory, and for a long time, no team was able to find an answer to this legendary offensive system. But times have changed. New generations are sweeping everything away, and dynasties are dying with the birth of new ones. And despite the color of your jersey, the legacy of your institution, and the legacy of your players, if you can't win in the NBA, it's all for nothing.